I wanted to ask Mr. Cueto, because he mentioned a number of, I would say, problems that relates to restructuring or rebuilding or improving the actual system. And within the system, you referred to the pumping stations. Now, one of the issues that Cuba has with the fall off of the ex-Soviet Union and the whole system around it was the energy part. Because a lot of the infrastructure that was built in the area where the Soviet Union was still there was based on getting cheap oil from the mother Russia or the mother Soviet Union, which in turns, without that oil coming, pumping plants have been deteriorated. So it's not just the waste and tear, but also the fact that they were built considering that this flow of oil was going to continue coming. Now we know that Cuba has a very high hydropower potential, but unfortunately it's not developed. And so how do you include in your equation, in terms of the study that you have done, the energy nexus that relates to the restructuring of the system?
Yes, after our study, we really do think that we looked at capital investment in terms of improving the system, but operation and maintenance is going to be a huge component. As you could all imagine, pumping is incredibly energy intensive. It requires a lot of energy. And currently one of the issues is energy. The fact that, like you mentioned, that many of those pumping stations cannot operate because they don't have an adequate supply of energy. So in a future Cuba, we would imagine that the reduction of water losses will help in terms of energy conservation, meaning that the water and wastewater systems will become more energy efficient as those recommended improvements are taken. Additionally, that hydropower potential needs to be taken advantage of, and sustainable energy sources need to be found to be able to run the water and wastewater system, because without energy and without adequate transportation as well, in terms of goods, because many of these water and wastewater plants require a number of supplies, equipment, filter media, chemicals, etc. Without adequate energy and transportation systems, really it's a lost cause. So all those things need to work together in synergy to have a final solution to Cuba's water and wastewater infrastructure issues.
Very good. There's another question from the audience.
Water sanitation and quality is often connected with education. Is there any information from the panel on how Cuba does with regard to educating the people about these issues?
I'm aware that the Cuban system, being the system that it is, has a capacity building at the child level that from the very, very early stages they, involve children. You have to wash your hands, you have to do this, you have to do that. I mean, in terms of formally education, and I think that there is a system in place that goes from the very young age all the way to the top. The problem is not that the people don't know this, that they have to wash their hands and so on, is that what is the quality of the water that you use to wash your hands or to wash your vegetables or take a bath. So there is awareness, but in addition to awareness, there has to be some, minimum standards, and that's where the situation is.
Any other questions? I have one of Mr. Cueto. You mentioned that the lack of availability of chlorine gas, and you mentioned also that perhaps one of the improvements could be the at-site treatment of the groundwater. Would that improvement then result in savings on water treatment, groundwater treatment moving forward? Was that more efficient than the current system that is utilized?
Efficient in the sense that it eliminates the issue of obtaining and transporting chlorine gas. Chlorine gas is a hazardous material. For example, in the United States, In water treatment, we avoid using chlorine gas because it is extremely toxic. So a leak or anything of that nature will be fatal to anyone in the vicinity. But in Cuba, the real concern isn't so much terrorism, rather transportation. So the transition between chlorine gas to on-site sodium hypochlorite generation will eliminate that need for transportation. But unfortunately, will create an issue in terms of energy because on-site sodium hypochlorite generation requires quite a bit of energy. So it's almost a trade-off between eliminating the transportation constraint, but now creating a little bit of a requirement or dependency on more energy input to be able to get a hold of that chlorine.
And of course, creating the capacity that is needed, that right now
Exactly.
doesn't exist.
Correct,
Now,
correct.
apart from solving the problem, it's not a major cost increase.
Exactly.
Any other questions? There's one back there. Back there.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if there are any other countries in the region, or even outside of the region, that closely resembles the same kind of experience of Cuba with the deterioration of the infrastructure, and if there are any lessons that we can learn from other countries that have maybe passed through similar experiences and have had some success. Or is Cuba exceptional once again?
I've worked in various countries, including the Dominican Republic, Colombia, Panama, among others. I would say the most similar in my personal experience would probably be the Dominican Republic, in the sense that there is a general lack. For example, in Santo Domingo, similar to Cuba, they have something on the order of 15 or so wastewater treatment plants, but less than 2 or 3 are operational. So most of the wastewater in the city of Santo Domingo is discharged directly to the bay, discharged directly to the river, so it's a very poor level of sanitation. So I guess in summary, there are a few countries that are comparable to Cuba, and many of those are developing countries within the Caribbean or within Latin America. So, Cuba in a sense is not unique in bad infrastructure or poor water and wastewater infrastructures. They're more of a group of several countries that are in the same straits. The issue in Cuba is obviously the politics and the funding.
We'll entertain one last question before the break. Right here.
I'd just like to make a comment. The panel, or distinguished panel, has correctly noted that the issue we're discussing is really a 3-part problem. There's water, wastewater, and energy. And when one considers those 3 parts, particularly energy, there's a dichotomy which appears between the directions that might be taken towards the urban environment and the directions that might be taken towards the rural or agricultural department. I just mentioned this because as we talk about approaches to the future, addressing the future needs, that dichotomy has to be borne in mind. So it's just a comment on what you noted. Thank you.
That was an extremely insightful comment and a perfect note to leave this at before the break and in preparation indeed for the next panel. Please be back promptly at 11:30 to initiate the next panel.